I'm going to back up to what I had intended to have be the first questions, but whenever I was creating my slideshow, I forgot these couple of questions. So we're going to back up to talk about the contract with Optotraffic. And I'm sorry I don't have a slide for this. We have two questions regarding how we do things with Optotraffic. The first one is, the city is under a contract. Did we have to put up money to get this program started? And I'll just answer this question. No, that was one of the perks actually of Optotraffic. They are paid through taking a portion of the citation. And that's actually the second question, how much do they receive? So they are paid by the number of citations that are actually paid. They take 40% and the city receives 60% of that citation. So with a $100 citation, Optotraffic receives $40 and the city receives $60. It's a 40-60 split. They provide upfront all of the hardware, so they provide the traffic cameras. They provide even the signs that were put up, which we'll get to in just a moment. They also, what they do is they provide a real, what they call a turnkey solution, where you just hire them, you turn the key and it fires up. They do pretty much everything. Not only providing the hardware, but also as far as the administration of it. They handle it all. Whenever you make a phone call, if there's a problem, you'll be talking with one of their representatives. They'll be helping you. They process all of the citations. They have software set up where the police then approve the citations, so they manage everything. The city institutes the program through passing the laws for it, and then the police force will monitor the citations to double check to make sure they're correct, each individual one, they approve them, and that is largely all that the city does for Maple Heights. That's about all that we do. The administrative appeal process, when that comes up, is handled by the city. They hire a representative to handle those. Not an employee, they can't have an employee of the city do it, but they hire a outside legal representative who is certified with the Bar of Ohio, with the Supreme Court of Ohio, to handle those. But besides those three things, there is nothing else that the city needs to provide. So that $40 goes to Optotraffic to obviously build their equipment, to manage all the administrative side of things, and to mail out and process all of the citations. That's how the contract works, and there was no money up front, except maybe a few dollars that were spent on the service crew who put up the signs, of the police who helped to calibrate the machinery. So those are two questions about the Optotraffic. Did the city have to put up money up front, and how much, or how is the money split? How much of the revenue does the city receive? Moving on to notification. This is something that a lot of questions have come up regarding signs and things. Was there a time? Were we notified? Where were we notified? How were we notified? All those kinds of things. So our first question, is there a dedicated place that lists all the information that we would need to know about the traffic cameras, like locations, how fast you'll be ticketed at, the amount of fines, how you do the appealing process, all those kinds of things. Is there a place, Chief?
No, there's not.
No, there's not. Maybe we should fix that.
Well, perhaps we will.
Yeah, maybe we should fix that.
Obviously, with the changes in the chief, the mayor's secretary, and whatnot, there's been some updates to the city's website. It was my hope much earlier on to be able to update that and include some of this information there. And we did put notice out on there that they were coming. However, we don't have the resources or the ability to update it on a regular basis. And now with perhaps the new secretary, we may be able to get that moving a little bit better. Notification was made in accordance with the law. In other words, it was posted in 5 public places. It was given out to the newspapers in terms of that they were coming. The signs themselves were provided, as the councilman pointed out, provided by Optotraffic, and they are in accordance with the law and what the requirements are. And we had them up within the specified time frame according to law.
I'd like to pause for a moment and ask you, Mayor Elkins, as the mayor of Newburgh Heights. You started about a year ago with your program. What process did you go through in Newburgh Heights to notify your residents and the public?
So we initiated our program. The legislation was passed in July. The program went live September 12th, 9th, 12th, something around there. In July, we ran a full-page ad in the neighborhood news that had the entire text of the ordinance. We ran another one in August, a full-page ad, entire text of the ordinance. We held a town hall meeting very similar to this in August before they went live. And then in our quarterly newsletter, we again did a full page of the newsletter, had the entire text of the ordinance there. And that was delivered to every household, every door in the community got a copy of it. In addition to that, the signs went up at the beginning, middle of, at least 30 days before the cameras went active. The signs went up at every entrance to the community, as well as the prescribed distance from where the cameras were going to be located. So we would engage in about a 45-day education program to let our residents know, and the greater community, because the neighborhood news covers Maple Heights, it covers Garfield, Independence, so all the surrounding suburbs were aware that we were instituting this process.
It sounds like you went the extra mile to let everyone know, and I'm sure your residents appreciated that. The next question regarding notification is about the signs themselves that were posted. There have been complaints about the signs not being large enough, not being noticeable enough, I think is the big thing. People drive by there every day, they didn't notice that sign that was put up because it didn't look much different than anything else that they see normally. What are your thoughts on that, Mayor?
We find that is the same reason we get when a police officer issues a citation for the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. The sign wasn't big enough. So generally speaking, the signs are located right next to speed limit signs or very near them. And I think part of the problem is, for all of us, we're signed out. There's signs everywhere. So they're white noise in many respects. However, as motorists, we have a responsibility to pay attention to what the legally posted signs are. And they're not that small. If you walk up next to it, they're not really that small. They're about that big. So they're not that small. And they say nothing else other than photo enforcement. So it's pretty plain as day. But we get that statement as well. But we also get that statement, I didn't see the speed limit sign. So we get that one too.
I know there's plenty of speed limit signs. I drove both Broadway and Warrensville this morning. There are a lot of speed limit signs. In one section of Broadway, there must have been one on every block. So there are a lot of signs. But I think the question is not so much the speed limit signs, but the photo enforcement signs. Chief, would you comment on the signs themselves? Why maybe they weren't a different color, size?
The signs that we received, and I'm sure it's probably the same one with Newburgh Heights, they were sent to us by the company Optotraffic. The Optotraffic representative, we were told and shown that they're in accordance with the state law. They made the signs, they gave them to us, we made sure that they were posted as required, and that's the reason for it. There was no requirement to make them orange, no requirement to make them bigger, and that's the reason for the signs in the way that they are what they are.
And signage does have, traffic signs do have, ODOT kind of lays out some stipulations as to what signs are supposed to look like, colors, that kind of thing. So they do comply with ODOT road standards.
So, let me see if I understand this correctly. Can a city can't make whatever sign it wants and put up?
That's a question for your law director.
Okay. Because that was one of the questions.
I believe we may have an answer from Detective Lieutenant Hanson, who happens to be in the back of our audience today.
The Uniform Manual Traffic Control Devices, set federally and by the state, They mirror each other, and there are certain colors and codes for different signs. Some speed limit signs that you see are yellow. Those are recommended speeds. They can't be enforced. Every other speed limit sign you see, what color are they? White and black, right? These photo enforcement signs are white and black because they're enforceable speed signs that's set by that manual.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hanson. For those of you who don't know, this is Detective Lieutenant Todd Hanson. He's a member of our police department. He's in charge of our detective bureau. He's here tonight as well.
Thank you, Detective Hanson. So we actually have our hands somewhat tied. We couldn't have put a 6 by 6 foot bright orange sign up saying "slow down, new traffic cameras." So I can understand that now. That might have been nice. Maybe we could have had some of the high schoolers make a big, yes, a big collage with colored construction paper to notify everyone. But that is a concern. People do want to be notified. In Cleveland, this is coming to our next question. They have a certain way, and as I understand, they still do it this way. Whenever they start put up a new camera, there is a grace period where the citations issued are warning citations. They don't come with a fine. They just say you received your warning. Heads up. We have a new camera. That obviously didn't happen here. Would any of you two like to comment on perhaps why that might have been?
Well, I don't know why it didn't occur in Maple Heights. I will tell you that Legality Heights also has speed cameras, and they follow a process very similar to ours. And they did a 30-day warning period, where the cameras, you get a warning for 30 days, and it's a warning citation. What we did in Newburgh Heights is because we ran such an extensive and lengthy public education program. What we did is for the first 30 days a camera is a new location, the most citation you can receive is 2. So if we move a camera and you get 10 citations, in the first 30 days that camera is operational, you're only liable for 2 of those. Because oftentimes if you're traveling back and forth to the same road, you might get hit 10 times in the same week before you actually get your first citation. But that's not really fair. So we issue 2. And then after that 30-day grace period is gone by, if you speed by it 10 times, you'll get 10 citations.
Exactly what the mayor said. That is our program as well. During that first 30-day period, you will not receive more than two citations from the cameras. There are no warnings sent out. However, you can't, as you pointed out, accrue 20 or 30. If you go back and forth to work, for example, on Warrensville Center 4 times a day, there and back and there and back, or because you came home for lunch or whatever, you're not going to get that, an excessive number of citations. So our program, probably because it's the same company, that's the protocol and the way that was followed.
Concerning the signs, we had something come up just today, actually just this morning. I had a resident call and ask why there aren't signs close to the cameras. There's signs saying photo enforcement at the city limits. As you come into town, it says speed limits are photo enforced. But then when you arrive at the location of the camera, there's no sign there, close proximity to the speed device. And he mentioned that he thought other programs were running in this way, where they had signs at the entrance to the city and signs in the proximity of the speed camera. And so I checked into that this morning with our representative and reading through our legislation that we had passed, and realized that's what things are supposed to be in Maple Heights. There's supposed to be warning signs at the city limit, and there's supposed to be signs within 300 feet of the actual camera itself. Sadly, there was some kind of miscommunication. The signs that are supposed to be by the cameras were placed, but they weren't placed within 300 feet. They were just placed somewhere underneath one of the 25-mile-an-hour signs. There's the big ones when you come to town, they're wide, and then inside town, there are a few of them underneath the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. There will be another one that just says photo enforced, that's all it says. Those signs are supposed to be closer to our cameras. That's something that we're now in the process of working out, because for some reason that didn't happen. So that is now being addressed. Would you like to comment, Chief?
Yeah, it has been addressed. It's done. It was done as of 3:30 this afternoon. Mr. Brownlee had made me aware of it this morning. Unfortunately, an arbitration hearing today and wasn't available until 2 o'clock. The signs have been moved in within 300 feet of the cameras. As far as the matter, in terms of anything resulting from that, that's a question for somebody else, but everything is the way it should be now.
Well, thanks, Chief. I'm glad to hear that. So moving on from notification to the impact of this program, won't the cameras hurt local businesses? This is a very serious concern, and rightfully so. There is a concern that the cameras being up will cause people to avoid the area of the camera and therefore the city itself. And we've even received emails, letters from individuals who are very upset about receiving a ticket, and they've said things like, I won't eat lunch in Maple Heights anymore on my lunch break, or I won't shop in Maple Heights anymore. We've received emails, letters about those things. That's what people have said. And Chief, I'd like to first ask you, do you have any preliminary thoughts on that?
Look, maybe I have a very simplistic way of looking at this. I don't know what impact it will have on the local businesses. Let me just say that right now. I can't comment to that. But what I can comment, or what I can tell you, is that the areas where the speed limit on those roads did not change simply because the traffic cameras were installed. Okay, the speed limits on those roads were the same that they were all the time. We're giving you 11 miles per hour to go over the speed limit before you're going to get a citation. I would think, perhaps unreasonably so, that should be enough, and that would not discourage anyone from using particular lane of travel. All we're asking to do, and all we're trying to do, is get compliance with the law. These are traditional enforcement areas where we've identified a problem. Perhaps the mayor can comment in terms of whether it's had an adverse impact on his community, in terms of whether there will be an impact or not. That'll be something that we'll see as we move down the road and as we evaluate the program as it goes along. I can't imagine, though, that the fact that you can't go over 36 miles an hour down one of these roads would impact anything in terms of your routes.
We have seen no such impact. The area where our camera is located, when we have done our traffic surveys, have indicated between 12 and 18,000 cars traveling that area every day. That number is consistent today. We've seen no legitimate drop-off. In fact, we have a brand new business building, an 8,000 square foot retail store a block from these cameras. So I think that that's a way of somebody lashing out and threatening the municipality because they're frustrated that they were caught speeding. And I don't think there's any legitimate long-term impact of that nature.
Just in addition, I mean, obviously, I don't know how many of you go down to University Circle or down to the art museums or anything down there. If you come down, I believe it's Chester, there are cameras all the way down there. I've driven on a number of occasions, and I just watch my speed, and I still go to the places that I want to go to down there, whether it's the coffee shop or one of the museums. I don't think that it would have a negative impact that way.
I have two comments on this. First is going around the city, handing out flyers, letting people know about what's happening. I spoke with maybe 20 business owners, and very few of them, maybe only a couple of them, were actually concerned about this. I gotten a bunch of man on the street interviews while I was out passing out the flyers with my children, asking people what they thought. And one of the questions I asked the business owners that I talked to was, how do you expect this to impact your business at all? And I expected to hear a lot of, yes, I do, I'm concerned, that people won't come here anymore, they'll avoid me. Actually, I had only a couple of people say that. I had one guy, which I really was dying to show you this because it was so funny. He said that he's actually glad because people will drive slower and they might notice his business more. That was unexpected, it made me chuckle. But I was surprised because I expected to hear the same thing from business owners, that they were dreadfully concerned that they will lose business because of these things. But they aren't concerned about that on the whole. Just a small minority are. But that doesn't mean anything because they might just be wrong. But I did ask once we instituted this program, and I started wondering, exactly how is this going to work out? Started looking for some other resources. I contacted Mayor Elkins and his office because they have a program. They've had one for a while. And that was the question I asked him. Have you seen a drop in the amount of people traveling through your city? And they have Harvard running through their village. And that's a fairly significant roadway that a lot of people use. And I looked at the numbers myself because the cameras, they count every vehicle that passes by. So they can tell you the exact number of vehicles that travel on the road. There has been no change whatsoever, none at all. The exact same number of vehicles in September of last year are traveling the roads now in July or August now of 2014. So while that popped into our heads, we said, okay, hey, I'm concerned about this. And we had a couple people send emails. Nonetheless, the statistical data shows otherwise, because that was a great concern of mine. I didn't want to hurt our businesses by doing this. Now, this is a question that I think just about everyone wants to know. How much money is the city going to make? Mayor, I'm sure you got this question a lot. I'm sure that a lot of residents wanted to know this. What happened in your city when people asked this? What were you thinking, and how did it work out?
What we did, Optotraffic is a national company. They've been doing this for many years. They have these units throughout Maryland and in other states as well. So they have a pretty good model for understanding traffic patterns. So they were able to say, okay, you're going to get in, let's say, 1,000 cars go by. And these are numbers. These aren't the exact statistics because I don't have those readily available to my memory at this point. Well, let's say 10% of them are traveling above the threshold. So you're going to get, of 1,000 cars, you're going to get 100 citations a day. About 60% of those folks will actually pay their citation. So that's the data we have. And then what they said is basically within 6 months to a year, that number will dwindle off to about half. And then it'll maintain itself at about 25% from that point beyond. So at that point, beyond a year or so, you'll see about 25% of your first year's number as your residents and the people that regularly travel that road start to comply with the speed limit. In our case, some of you may have seen the news story that came out last week, Channel 3 News. In the first year, we will issue roughly 10,000 citations for our program, of which, we'll see that number on day one. We saw 700 people drive by going 10 miles an hour or more over the speed limit. Today, that number is anywhere between 25 and 40. So people are complying with the law. Obviously, that means you can't plan on using that money to pay for things like higher salaries and things like that. That money can't be planned for long-term regular expenses because it's going to drop.
So how did you use the money in Newburgh Heights?
We've used it in a number of different ways. We used it as an economic development tool to go after blight. We've torn down a significant number of homes with those resources. We fixed a lot of roads with those resources. We have used a limited amount of it to do special shifts for law enforcement. If we have an investigation that we need, we'll bring an extra guy on and let him work some overtime. We've used it to purchase property that we plan to put on the market for economic development. And we'll be using it, most of the money will go toward building our new city hall, which will happen in the next year or so.
So you haven't used it, I guess, in your general fund for general operational expenses?
That's correct. We did give our police officers raises, but we passed the levy to do that. That was done through levy, so that these resources were not impacted. So we didn't provide pay raises with these resources. We didn't add 4 new police officers on every shift. We didn't add a new service department employee. We didn't do those things with this money.
So does this go into a special fund of its own?
It does go into our general fund.
Okay.
But when we appropriate at the beginning of the year, we earmark these dollars that we anticipate raising through the enforcement program for specific items.
Okay. So you track it through the general fund.
Correct.
The residents in Newburgh Heights, Mayor, what over these past 9 or 11 months, what has been the impact on them, and how are they feeling about the cameras now 11 months later?
Oddly enough, there was the initial frustration that I think that is probably common with this device, because it's mostly a new technology for a lot of the communities outside of Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. So what we found is there were a lot of questions because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that's what people see, is the misinformation. They don't take the time like you guys have done to come and get details. Today, what we're finding is they're actually having people call City Hall and ask us to put speed cameras on their street because they want their kids protected. They want people going slower. Hey, can you move one over here? Listen, I got somebody comes down the street all the time. So that's what we're finding today, is that now that our residents understand how these cameras work, there's almost becoming a localized demand for them.
That's very interesting. That's not something I would have expected. Thank you for your insights, Mayor. We're about an hour in, so I want to move quickly through the remainder of these questions so we can hit the ones that have been handed to me from you, and then give you an opportunity to ask questions this evening. So let's move on to our last section, which is about the legal issues regarding the cameras. There are significant court cases going forward. I know of Toledo and one in Cleveland, I believe, regarding traffic cameras. So it's a little up in the air on how they will work. Some people are saying they're illegal, but some people say it's only a portion of it, the way it's done. So I'm going to skip over for right now that first question and go right into the is it legal? What about facing your accuser? Which of you two would like to comment?
So the question, and there have been multiple courts both in Ohio and throughout the nation that have said, yes, these are absolutely legal. It's not a criminal citation. So you don't have to have an accuser be present in the traditional sense that we're used to receiving a speeding violation. It becomes a matter of how much evidence is the city. Your accuser becomes the city, or in my case, the village. That's your accuser. They provide the evidence in a civil situation, and the evidence is the data collected by the camera itself.
In agreement with the mayor. I mean, obviously, these citations, just so we're clear, they are reviewed by a law enforcement officer. Okay, they are signed on by that. If you were to go to the administrative hearing, and the mayor can affirm this, you have an opportunity then to talk to a police officer or to face them. They'll show you the pictures. I mean, if you've received a citation, they're pretty clear. It's the vehicle and it tells you what it is. Some of the issues, perhaps, I won't comment in terms of the legality because I'm not an attorney. I can tell you right now that in the state that they're legal, and that's why they're in place. In terms of their reliability, yes, they're reliable, they're calibrated, the calibration is checked. First they're calibrated by the company, and then the calibration is checked on a regular basis, and as a matter of fact, that's part of the protocol before the citations are issued. The issuing officers actually look at a report generated by Optotraffic to verify that in fact that it's passed the required test, the internal test that check the calibration. Additionally, if it does not, in other words, if for whatever reason it fails that self-calibration check, notification is made immediately to Optotraffic, who can then either fix it remotely or come out and take care of the problem. During the time frame when it does not, when there's a fail message, that camera's not functioning. In other words, it's not issuing citations during the time frame that the calibration is not verified.
Thanks. We're going to go just one more of these legal questions so we can get to the other ones. What is happening with the petition drive? Are you familiar much with it? If not, I'll just go ahead and take it. Well, there was a petition circulated. Mr. Leroy Peterson, if you would wave to the crowd, he was one of the white-haired gentleman who doesn't want to wave. He helped, along with other residents who were concerned about this, to circulate a petition. The petition is to put a charter amendment on the ballot in November, just like was done in Garfield Heights, I believe. So to ban the cameras, to say we will not have traffic monitoring devices in the city of Maple Heights, something to that effect. So it effectively would get rid of the program. So they have collected over 1,000 signatures, and last Tuesday of last week, they delivered it to City Hall, to the clerk of council, and I'm sure that there's going to be plenty of signatures, the required number of signatures, so that this will be on the ballot in November. So residents will have a chance to decide whether or not they want this program for themselves. So whatever 51% or more of the residents decide will become law in Maple Heights. So that petition has been submitted. There's no more signatures being taken for it, but don't worry, there's already plenty. So you don't need to sign it. They got plenty of signatures, I'm sure. So this will then go down to the Board of Elections. They will certify and make sure that all the signatures are correct, that they're valid, and then the Board of Elections will be placing it on the ballot in November. So we'll have an opportunity to vote on this. So I don't want to take any more time on the legal issues so that we can get to some of the questions that you have submitted tonight on your cards. Did anyone have a comment? Last comment on legal issues? If you have any more, please feel free to fill them out, or if we get through these, then there will be a time to just come to the microphone and ask your questions. So here's the ones. I'm sorry if I didn't read them in the order in which they came, but I'm sure we'll get through all of them. This first question is, if the proposed charter amendment to ban the cameras is passed, will citations issued and paid prior to the ban be refunded? And that's a good question. Would you like to take it, Mayor? Go ahead.
Well, I can't speak specifically to your charter amendment issue. However, I will tell you that the court precedent that already exists in Ohio is that by paying the camera citation, you have admitted liability, and the courts are not going to require you to have your money refunded. Two separate Court of Appeals decisions have ruled the same thing, because what they're saying is that you are admitting by paying that you were breaking the law.
And there's actually a notice in the citation that says paying this is an admission of guilt. That's what came to mind whenever you said that. Chief?
Look, I don't know whether that would be the case or not. I agree with the mayor. I mean, because of the fact that payment is considered an admission of liability, and you've admitted your wrongdoing, and that you're not going to get that money back. And obviously, anything up to the ordinance that was passed, that would be another question, a question for a law department or somebody else. But I'm going to guess that anything that's issued and paid up to the point that that charter amendment takes effect, or until the charter is changed, that they would still stand.
Thank you, Chief. This next question is, what year were camera tickets enacted into Congress? I'm not quite certain, but I'm assuming that this means when were they found to be lawful or constitutional in nature. So, Mayor, do you have any insight into this? You seem to be pretty familiar with these things.
Well, in the state of Ohio, this is part of the conundrum. The courts have not ruled
I've had a meeting now.
at this point. In fact, the courts that have ruled have said the cameras themselves and the citations are legal. It's the right, the question in front of the Ohio Supreme Court right now is whether a municipality has the right to create a hearing department, or should that automatically go to Garfield for adjudication? That's the question. So the answer is Congress hasn't passed this, but the courts in other states have ruled this is legal. And in Ohio, we have home rule, and when your municipality decides they're legal, that's when they're legal, until one of two things happens. The Supreme Court rules, or the state legislature passes law making these uniform. Neither of those things have occurred yet.
So this is something that we'll be watching for, how the Supreme Court decides the cases that are before it now.
September, October, you should have an
Okay.
answer, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, November. It'll be soon.